Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. It's a pity that I cannot be there with you today face to face, which is always nicer. I will try to speak to you for just maybe 15 minutes and hopefully persuading you to consider attending the World Environmental Education Congress next year to be held here in Gothenburg, where I'm speaking from today. It is quite special to have still international meetings on environmental education, especially now that we are ending the decade of education for sustainable development, which the United Nations has been supporting and will be supporting in the years to come using the Global Action Program for Sustainable Development. I've titled my talk today, Earth is Calling, Anybody Answering? I'm doing this for a reason. What you see in front of you right now is the iPhone 6. The iPhone 6 will be released one of these days, also in Italy, where you are based today. And there will be a lot of people anticipating this new iPhone. Apple will be making about 80 million of those phones this year and is sure to sell them, I suspect. We all know that the phones, the cell phone technology, have changed our lives a lot, not just in the wealthier parts of the world, but also in some of the poorest parts of the world. And the phone can be seen as a blessing for some, for many, but it can also be seen as a symbol for the kind of consumerist society that we are living in today. What you see in front of you now is a special photograph, a composition really, done by Chris Jordan from the United States, who represents with this photo our consumerist lifestyles. These are all cell phones. 426,000 of these cell phones are thrown away every day in the United States alone. Worldwide, it is estimated that 1 million of phones are discarded off. Now, I'm using the cell phone as a kind of metaphor, as you will see during the remainder of my talk. We could ask a number of questions about cell phones, and I think environmental educators and sustainability educators could easily use something like a cell phone as a starting point for teaching and learning about today's sustainability challenges. What's it made of would be a question. What kind of elements, metals are in it? Where do these components that are in our phones come from? How does the phone affect our lives? How does it affect the lives of others in other parts of the world, maybe of future generations? And we could also ask ourselves, is there a future for cell phones? Can they be used maybe to move towards a more sustainable world? Now, if we look at the cell phone and we dissect it from a life cycle analysis point of view, we can see that there are issues related to the extraction of the minerals and the metals and the oil that is used to make and produce the cell phone, but also when assembling the cell phones, when producing the cell phones, when distributing the cell phones. Every step in the life cycle has some environmental consequence, and not just environmental, as we will see, also social and ecological and ethical consequences. Also what we do at the end with the cell phone, what happens to it? Most of you probably have a few at home, somewhere tucked away in a drawer, not being used, with many chargers that are all a little bit different. And maybe you find it difficult to throw your cell phone away because it's so much a part of you. It used to be your identity, but now you have a new one and soon you may have your iPhone 6. Now, if we would dissect a cell phone and take it apart and we would look at all the elements and bits and pieces and chips that are in there, then we would notice that there are at least 200 different ingredients. And we could ask young people or students or high school students to do this. They all have old phones at home, bring them to school, take them apart and see what's in those phones. And you will see, for instance, in chemistry class, you will find that many of the elements in the periodic table of elements will be in your cell phone. And you will also see that those parts come from all over the globe, from Africa, from Asia, North America, also Latin America. The whole world basically is packaged in your cell phone. And of course, the extraction of these rare earth metals that are extremely expensive these days and leading to all kinds of conflict in some parts of the world is affecting the environment, the ecological well-being, and also affecting the lives of the people living around these areas. If you would look at the world map from a perspective of where do these minerals, metals, cell phones go mostly, then you see that most of it goes from the south to the north. There is a kind of inequity in the direction of which things are going. Here's a picture somewhere taken in Africa where somebody is looking for scraps of metal in the soil near mines, hoping to find something of value. We all know about blood diamonds in parts of Africa. We now see that there's also blood cell phones. If you Google that or YouTube blood cell phones, you will see sometimes exaggerated but nonetheless real images of people struggling and fighting for their livelihoods, using oftentimes violence to secure those livelihoods. But there's another way of looking at cell phones. If we look at what it does with our everyday lives, people seem to be very connected through the phones. But if we look more closely, are they really connected? Are they having meaningful interactions, or are they shallow interactions? People in poor parts of the world are also increasingly attracted to their phones and find it very difficult to ignore these phones. There are parts of the world where the phone is actually taking a lot of their resources in order to have a phone, because it's expected that you have a phone. It is interesting to note that in 50 years we have not been successful in having clean drinking water for all. There are still almost 1 billion people without drinking water, clean drinking water. But we have succeeded in getting cell phones all over, to the heart of Burundi, to the heart of Colombia, all over the planet. People are using cell phones. Why is it that we're good at spreading the technology, but not so good in creating clean drinking water for all? If we look at how people become dependent on the cell phone and how people's identities are connected to the cell phone, we can wonder, does it lead to more meaningful lives, or does it really deepen our relationships? Does it deepen our connections with the physical world around us? Here on the upper left corner you see a slide that is telling people who are visiting a national park that there will be a cell phone connection, cell phone connectivity just ahead. So don't worry, you can use your cell phone soon. In the upper right we see a mother with her child, engaging with the cell phone but not necessarily with the child. In the lower right, is the woman really paying attention? Does she see the elephant, or is the attention going to the phone? In the lower left we see a street scene, lots of people, and if you look closely they're all using their phone. Of course, there's also the magic of marketing. Cell phones are connected to being sexy, to giving to being an extension of your identity, to make you feel good. If you do not have a cell phone, a good one, the latest one, then you're not really with it. And there's a lot of push to always keep up with the latest model. If you would redraw the map of the world from a corporate globalization perspective, it may look like this. We are increasingly being framed by the brands that we buy and purchase. This is part of our economic system. This is what drives the economy, and the more cell phones we buy, the more we consume, the more we can continue to keep our economy going, and increasingly we see that the economy is seen as the key of life. We are almost born to be consumers, and our education is increasingly focusing on preparing young people to be diligent workers, flexible workers, who can learn their lifelong learning, they call it, in order to be good consumers that can function in a globalizing economy. And of course, as educators, we need to ask the question, is this what education is for? Is it education to serve the economy, or is it education to serve people and planet? If we look at the inequality between that the cell phones cause in a way, then we see here a picture from India, the lower left, the upper caste, a woman well-to-do, has a cell phone, and the lower right, lower caste, a poor woman growing up in poverty, also has a phone. So their access to the phone is equal, but the portion of their income going to the phone is very unequal. And then there, of course, at the end of the life cycle, where we see the e-waste, where phones are being taken apart, computers are taken apart, we see that under sometimes not the best conditions, in toxic environments, young people, but also adults, work under very poor circumstances, not very good for their health, in order to make a living. The cell phone, in a nutshell, contains the whole sustainability question. It has environmental implications, it has ecological implications, it has ethical implications, it has socio-economic implications, it even has cultural implications. It captures the sustainability question quite well. And I also could have started with maybe what we eat every day, or maybe the cup that I'm drinking from. We could analyze it in a similar way. What's in it? Where does it come from? How can we use it in different ways? But also, and this is the last question, can we use it in another way? In a more generative way that can help us lead more sustainable lives? Can we use the cell phone, for instance, to help us connect with the physical places of which we are part, to help us see possibilities to live more lightly on the earth? Here you see a slide where there are lots of apps displayed. We also need to think more positively. We cannot deny that there will be cell phones and that there will be new technology. It's inevitable that there will be new technology, that there will be innovation. But what we really need to think about is how can we channel the technology, channel that innovation, not just to serve convenience, entertainment and the economy. How can it also serve the well-being of people and planet? How can it strengthen ecological mindfulness? How can it deepen our relationships? How can it deepen our relationship between the physical world that we are part of? So we also need to think about designing apps that could reconnect us. Apps that could help us understand climate change or biodiversity loss, or apps that could help us understand where our food comes from, that could help us live more sustainable lives. And I think as educators, we need to also engage young people in the design of these apps and understanding the relationships and the interconnections between what we eat, how we drive, or how we move around. It should not always be driving, perhaps. So to rethink our lifestyles, to make the ordinary less ordinary, and to start asking some tough questions about what is pushing us in what direction. Here's an example of this. This is YardMap from Cornell University, where citizen science, as a new concept, where citizens can monitor, in this case, biodiversity in their own neighborhoods and help improve biodiversity, where apps are being used to visualize this and to also share what they find with other citizens in their neighborhoods. This kind of an approach requires also that we rethink our schools. Here's an example of a whole school approach to sustainability education, and as far as I'm concerned, that's also environmental education, where the school itself represents sustainability, having solar panels, having wind energy, where there is group learning, more democratic learning in the school, where the school maybe repairs its own bikes, where students actually have a bike shop, maybe selling second-hand bikes, maybe reinvesting the money in sustaining a school garden, maybe actually having a school garden, using the products from the garden and school lunches, working together with the community, creating a whole school that focuses on teaching and learning and community engagement, where the motivation goes up, where the well-being of students, teachers goes up, where teaching becomes more meaningful, where learning becomes more enjoyable. This journey, using the cell phone as a starter, as an appetizer, by introducing some of the themes that we will be covering in 2015 at the World Environmental Education Congress. First of all, we need to take children more seriously in addressing global challenges. They are part of this world. We are not educating the future generation in a way that they're not ready yet and that they should be prepared for later in life. No, they already are part of today's society. They're already being inundated with advertisement, for instance. They need to become more able to cope, more able to contribute, and to be more empowered and capable to grow up in a rapidly changing world. Second theme, reclaiming sense of place in the digital age. If the cell phone and new technologies drive us away from the local forests, the local parks, if we don't care and experience nature anymore, no matter where we are, even in urban areas, then who will care for nature? Who will care at all if we don't see it anymore, if we don't experience it? So how can the digital age also be an age in which we rediscover the physical, natural, outdoor world? Thirdly, environmental education and sustainability education should also focus on poverty, on inequity, on the unfair distribution of food, of resources, and of the means to survive. If we look at the water question, we still need to provide clean drinking water for all. We should be able to do that. So what is the role of environmental education in creating a more just, equitable world? Fourth, the whole school approaches is an example of what I would call learning in vital coalitions of different stakeholders: the community, private sector, the world of research, the world of education, civil society, NGOs, movements, transition town movements, alternative food movements, working together, co-creating more sustainable solutions. So we need to link science, society, school and community in order to become more effective in bringing about change in a more sustainable way. Then we also need to acknowledge that there are new kinds of developments: cradle to cradle, closed cycle design, new ways of organizing how we eat, how we consume. In fact, maybe we should abandon that whole notion of consumption and production and start seeing it more as living our lives more fully, not as consumers, but as human beings. Sixth, an old theme in environmental education, sustainability education. A lot of people are becoming aware of the pressure the earth is under, of the resources disappearing, of climate change happening. But awareness doesn't automatically lead to a change in behavior, a change in lifestyle. More is needed. Governance needs to change. Support needs to change. Resources need to be allocated differently. We need to learn in different ways. So to move from awareness to action, we need to redesign our education, our governance, and indeed the way we use our technology. Finally, there's a lot of talk about the green economy and green jobs. In a way, it's good that the world of business is getting interested in sustainability questions. But we must also make sure that these jobs are meaningful jobs, that they lead to more meaningful lifestyles, that it's not just to keep the economy going, that it's a form of green gloss or green washing, if you will. We need to move beyond the green economy to a green society. Finally, I just want to encourage all of you to consider submitting a proposal, whether you're a practitioner or more research oriented. Submit a proposal the month to come. Registration is just opened last week, and we think Gothenburg is a wonderful place for hosting this conference. It has two great universities, Gothenburg University and Chalmers University. They share a joint center on environment and sustainability. The University of Gothenburg is about to launch a number of global challenges centers addressing sustainability issues from across the globe. And it is an environment that is not only beautiful in terms of its city, its green, its archipelago, the islands outside of the city, and Sweden as a host country is an excellent country to help all of us explore, design, and indeed critique the way we live our lives and the way we use education and learning. Thank you.